to Breaking the Gray. Hello, educators. In today's episode of Breaking the Gray, we will be joined by Dr. Celest Austin, the CEO and founder of GoManda. Since completing her MD PhD in 2016, she has been breaking the stigma against autism by nurturing the strengths of autistic people. She built her company GoManda with the belief that autistic individuals should be accepted just the way they are. Over the course of this conversation, we will talk about the influence of her sister Amanda in her career and in her life, the misconceptions around autistic individuals that we definitely need to break, and how Celeste overcame the challenges she faced in launching that company, GoManda, that we love. This inspiring conversation will help you look deeper into your values and understand the importance of having a North Star in your entrepreneurial journey. Let's bring up Celeste and my co-host and friend, John Gamba.
Hello.
Hey, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Hey, guys. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're really excited to have you, Celeste. We've been kind of following your journey since we met at ASU GSV and kind of getting deeper and deeper into what you're all about. And John and I talked before the show, and we really kind of discussed this idea of North Star. And North Stars don't just happen out of nowhere. So your North Star, or maybe two of them, could be your family, and then the other star in your life, the state of Texas, where you're educated. So talk to us about your journey and how it started, especially around your family.
Yeah. I grew up in Texas. I actually grew up in Houston. And I was always like a very curious and scientifically minded child. So like when the whole concept of Santa Claus was introduced to me, I even tested that idea without telling my parents. I was like, I'm going to put out some cookies and I'm not going to tell my parents, and I'm going to see if they get eaten. And they didn't. And I was like, I knew it. So just things like that. I had always been very curious. And so when my sister was born, I was obviously like, I thought I had a great ally and friend. And as the challenges kind of came up, I grew more and more curious about her. And one of the things that for me, I noticed, growing up was just that she just had a very different way of thinking. And that was at the time not the idea of autism. That autism was just very much an enigma. Nobody knew anything, at least mainstream wise, about autism. And even my parents didn't really understand it. And so I was feeling like I was a scientist at that age, like learning who she was, and really being her like strongest ally, I guess.
Yeah. I get, John, obviously you do a lot of work with a lot of different entrepreneurs. How often do you see that, it's the chicken or the egg? Is it the business, or is it the person? Is it the experiences? Is it home life? Like how often does that home life influence the business they create?
I can't say enough about how many entrepreneurs are impacted by a family member and use that impact to drive how they push forward in their entrepreneurial journey, especially in this area of neurodiversity. I've had entrepreneurs who literally came forward and just said, I just wanted to connect with my guy. And a business was born out of how to communicate, how to engage, how to embrace, how to love somebody who deals with a neurodiversity challenge. So absolutely seeing many entrepreneurs who are struck or impacted by their family members, which guides their entrepreneurial journey.
And did it have that effect, Celeste, in terms of love? Did it bring you closer? Has it brought you closer?
Yeah, I feel like being in a very unique position of being a little older than her and being her sibling, I got to see her in a way that I think my parents couldn't see her, her doctors couldn't see her, and her educators. And I think, also I was always a little different as well as a child. So, I could relate to having differences. And yeah, I mean, it really fueled at least the passion for, for us to really empower autistic voices.
And then it drove you, and who knows when this all started in terms of your education, so can you talk about how you then said, okay, this is going to be my focus, not only, entrepreneurially, but I've got to learn. So when did the learning start, and does the learning ever end on stuff like this?
Oh yeah, you're always a learner. That's what I always say. If you think that you've got everything figured out, you don't. You're in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
I actually didn't think about, doing anything neuroscience wise until high school. Before that, I was actually wanting to be an archaeologist. I was very curious about the unknown. At least in my head, that was the unknown. Like learning about what made us, who we are. And it kind of made sense that I then transitioned to neuroscience after that, because in a way, it's a way for us to understand who we are on a more, I guess, neurological way. And really my sister, because of her, I've always been curious about her and myself as well. I really thought neuroscience was such a really cool field to start learning about. And so for me, it was also the fact that we didn't really know much about autism when I was growing up, and I wanted to help bridge that gap. And so autism and neuroscience kind of became my two passions.
If you would have, if your last name was College Station, would you have gone somewhere else?
I get that all the time. I know, right? It's destiny that I'm here in Austin.
Tell us about the experiences and some of the resources. And I'm here at Penn's Graduate School of Education with a lot of amazing resources in the areas of human and optimal development, in the areas of English language arts. Tell us about the programs at UT Austin in the areas of neurodiversity and learning science, learning engineering.
So there were a very limited amount of resources at the time. And that's just because that was just the state of affairs at the time. But I kind of, rotated through a few majors. I landed at human biology, which was really fascinating to me because it was a new, and now I'm sure it's not, but at the time it was a brand new major. And what it did was it went through the course of human evolution and then the cultural aspects and all that. So it gave this really holistic viewpoint alongside the biology and the neurobiology as well. And so I think that just gave such a complete picture of human existence in a way.
Yeah.
And in a way that kind of, segues to neurodiversity, because neurodiversity, we had neurodivergent minds all throughout the course of history. We needed different types of neurodivergent minds throughout history to succeed. We needed someone dyslexic. We needed someone who's autistic. And those comprise of a tribe that could succeed. And we know this when we build businesses, right? When we build a team, we don't want everybody to be the same. We want everyone who has different skill sets to come together and to, synergize. And so the same can be said about neurodiversity. It's amazing that we, just realize, and at least now, like when I'm hearing about the neurodiversity movement, people are surprised when they hear this. They're like, oh, I didn't even think of it that way. But yeah, it's always been there and it fits perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about neurodiversity and almost a demystification of neurodiversity, because, I too, growing up, was managing and challenged by a situation with dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
And I always found that the demystification was important by looking at it through an asset lens and not a deficit lens. Mm-hmm. What could being neurodiverse do to help me, as opposed to it being a malady or something that was a stigma? Tell us about demystification and looking at neurodiversity through an asset lens instead of a deficit lens.
So, to be fully honest, when I was going through my graduate studies and even medical school, that's how a lot of these things are being viewed as from a deficit lens. And I kind of, thinking that I didn't know everything, I bought into it for for a very short period, and reading the literature and all that. And then realizing that some of the literature, they'll just gloss right over anything that suggests that there's a strength. So when they're looking at like brain structures and things like that, they'll really focus on what, quote unquote, the deficit parts of the brain that correlate with the condition, but gloss over any hyperfunctionality, anything like that, hypervolume. They just gloss right over it. And I thought that was so interesting that even science can be biased, even medicine can be biased. And wouldn't it be great if we could just transform that lens and really talk about the areas of the brain that are hyperfunctional and have more volume and brain mass and all that stuff? That is not the central point. We just gloss right over it. Wouldn't it be amazing if the field shifted in that way? And it would transform the way we approach, any neurodivergent learner, any neurodivergent patient. It would transform the way we do policy. It would transform just basic, human rights in a way. And yeah, so I mean, like, that's, to me, it starts from, I think it just starts from language. It starts from our mindset.
And just so we can all level set here, obviously, Celeste, Dr. Austin, the way you're speaking is super intelligent. How long does it take to get a dual degree like that?
Well, it depends on how fast you can get your PhD.
How long did it take you?
It took me 5 years. So there's the medical school component is 4 years, and then the PhD part is, for me, was 5 years.
That's an incredible journey before starting the business journey. So can you talk about, getting through that part of the journey first, and were there times where, you were kind of broken maybe at that point?
Obviously, the first part of that journey was doing 2 years of medical school. And then I made a lot of good friends, and then having to go to grad school while they got to finish medical school. And so that was a big, painful break. And then grad school is very hard because as opposed to medical school where there's a clear path, graduate school is kind of like you're just dumped into the ocean and you have to figure everything out. So, there were some really, really dark times where I just didn't know where my project was going. Everything was failing. I thought about walking away, and I think it was just, knowing that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I had to believe that there was a light. And eventually it came to be. And so even during that whole time, I thought about this idea of GoManda. And really, that's at the time, I even had the idea before I went to medical school and even graduate school. I had thought about something like this. And as I near the end of all that training, I was like, I know now. I've done all the medical school. I've done all of the grad school work. I think I really do want to start this venture. Yeah.
Yeah. You thought you were ready. And we're almost ready to talk about GoManda. We're going to hold it back a little bit longer. We're going to bring on Anna, my business partner here at Cascade. And we're going to talk about another one of your Elite 200 colleagues, Vishal Goenka, and Two Sigma School. So Anna, tell us about Vishal, and then we will roll the tape on his Big Breaks segment so we can all learn more.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. So Big Breaks is a special segment where we are featuring companies that made the Elite 200 from ASU GSV conference. And the goal is for us to feature those entrepreneurs in the education space that they have just started a company or launched an idea, but they are already breaking the grade. They are changing the status quo about the way we learn, the way we teach, and how we grow as professionals and human beings. Check out this big break from Vishal Goenka and Two Sigma School.
I'm Vishal Goenka, founder and CEO of Two Sigma School. I'm a breaker because I'm naturally very curious, and education has been a big passion of mine, but I'm also an engineer at heart. And And so I'm very curious about applying the principles of engineering to see if we can expedite learning in the 21st century that we're in. What led me to become a breaker is that my passion for education met with the perfect storm that the education industry is experiencing as it is trying to break out of the traditional mold that it has been in. My company is breaking the gray by enabling more students to become creators and innovators of technology, not just consumers of it. The challenge that almost broke me was that computer science in the 21st century is what physics was in the 20th. And yet, less than 9% of our students are graduating high school with any understanding of how computers really work. They have become passionate consumers of digital technologies without a real understanding of how these technologies are shaping their everyday lives and will continue to shape careers in the future. My future plans to break the education industry is to bring real-world skills to students that are connected with their passion and that bring out the creators and the innovators in them. We plan to bring consumer-centric design to their educational experience. My best advice to our fellow entrepreneurs in the education space is that a lot of the advice that you get today is based on experiences of the past, but we're living in unprecedented times in education. So listen to that advice, but take it with a big grain of salt.
I love the end of that with Vishal. A big grain of salt. I've only seen little grains of salt, but he wants us to take a big grain of salt. Anna, what were your thoughts on speaking with Vishal? I know you guys have been talking after the conference as well.
Yeah. So one thing that caught me was the part of the content creation and the creativity. We are in a generation where kids are naturally creative. They are creating things for social media in a way, and they have no idea how this is going to change the way we study, the way we work. But they, being creative, they are not being prepared to live in this world where they need to be creative to contribute to the society. So I think that we need to show them how to be creative and proactive. I think that's the missing link between.
Definitely. Well, our friend Vishal is up to that. And thank you, Anna. You are our friend. We're going to get back to GoManda here. Now It's time to talk specifically about GoManda. I think that there's, when you talk about social media and you look at Instagram, I have spent some time on your Instagram page. It's actually really interesting, some of the misconceptions that you talk about, Celeste. And so please tell us first about GoManda, but then also talk to us about the misconceptions.
Yeah. So, I mean, GoManda has been a lifetime of work, and it's a vocabulary app that teaches vocabulary to autistic kids by using their learning style. Kind of like a Netflix for vocabulary is what I say. And it really takes advantage of the hyperfunctional mind of autism. And it really builds those important foundation of vocabulary that leads to better communication.
Okay. And again, your ability to communicate, I have been watching it a lot on Instagram. And I got to admit, I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram, to tell you the truth. Promise. But some of the videos that you've done have been quick and clear, very clear about the misconceptions and identity first. So can you talk us through that real powerful idea about identity first?
Right. So there's obviously, it's been starting since the 90s, this whole movement where a lot of the autistic individuals are becoming adults and speaking up. For a long time, and actually still today, amongst many professionals, we use they use person first language, which is person with autism. The problem with that language is that it separates the person from their what autistic people are saying, their identity. So autism is something that can be separate from them. It's something that's so integrated into who they are, just like a race, someone's race. And so to be called a person with autism is to try, it's a window into how society is trying to separate and from a long history of trying to fix and cure autism. And autistic people are saying, no, this is a part of who I am. I like who I am. And you can't separate that. So call me an autistic person, which is identity first language.
Yeah, I really like this too. And I think it comes back to some demystification and looking at neurodiversity through a different lens. There was also a movement in the 90s and into the 2000s on the culturally and the cognitively diverse classroom. And there's a lot of research out there, and maybe you could respond to this, Celeste, that says we shouldn't be thinking about what can we do for autistic students. We should be thinking about what can we do for the cognitive or the culturally diverse or the culturally or cognitively inclusive classroom to take advantage of the qualities of the neurodiverse or the cognitively diverse student, because that's the world, right? You know, we have to work on teams in companies. We have to work in groups. We have to get along with each other, and we're not all the same. We're diverse in different ways, and there's advantages to a classroom that has cognitive diversity, if you will.
Right. So that's the same idea of the fact that, you know, human evolution would not have succeeded without different minds, different cognitively different individuals being a part of the team, being part of that tribe. You know, so that's a great concept. A classroom is kind of a tribe, and you need to have different minds in that classroom. And, you know, there's another concept called double empathy problem, where, you know, both parties, both the neurodivergent person and the non-neurodivergent person, there's a chasm of understanding between those two individuals. And that leads to all the problems that we're talking about. So for the autistic person, for example, you know, they are commonly misunderstood. A lot of individuals don't realize all the sensory issues that they may have. And they're trying to process their environment and process social cues as well. Whereas the non-neurodivergent individual probably doesn't have a very clear understanding of all of those challenges of that autistic person. So there's this chasm of understanding that needs to, you know, eventually close for us to, you know, happily exist in a way.
Let me ask you this. Give us some advice. So as I talk to family members of neurodiverse students, I often say, what can I do to be a better advocate for neurodiversity? And I'll never forget, one parent said, we have to stop talking about, well, Elon Musk is neurodiverse. Why do we have to put somebody on a pedestal or have to point to neurodiversity through that lens? It's great that Elon Musk has been so successful, I guess, if you deem him to be successful, as he's dealt with his own challenges. And his own neurodiversity. But what advice can you give lay people who don't have much of an understanding of neurodiversity to be part of this advancement of this cause?
I would say probably the first thing is to be curious, ask questions. This is, you know, the problem is people come into the situation with their preconceived notions, their assumptions, and that can be so dangerous. And so be curious. You can ask questions, be observant, and realize that we are all just different. Just imagine all of us are just entirely different beings, different brains. And so approach that each person with curiosity. I mean, this is a rule probably for anyone, right? But really set aside your assumptions, set aside all of that, and come into the situation with an open mind and learn.
Maybe just be human.
Be human. We're all just human, right? You know, and then that's a rule, as I said, like that's a rule for just being a human being. Like just be curious about others and have an open mind. Don't assume.
So, we've got some lifelong lessons here of not assuming and being learners. There's a lot to learn also through your app, which kind of seems to be one of a kind. But talk us through, especially for the entrepreneurs that are out there, listening. You didn't just build this app overnight. From what it looks like it took somewhere, around 3 years. So talk about that journey. And it's not easy. People may think it's easy to put an app out, but it's not. So talk about how you came up with the concept and did it.
Yeah. So like I said, I had some idea of it even before medical school, because I understood how my sister's mind worked. She needed a lot of different variations of a noun to really solidify that concept. And so I always knew that there needed to be a resource out there to have that bank of nouns. But it was a difficult journey because initially when I came out of medical school and grad school, I didn't know anything about business. So I had to get advice from other people. And I will say, and this is something that I tell other entrepreneurs, in the beginning, it's going to feel very personal. Everything is going to feel very, very personal, and you can't let it, and you can't help it sometimes, but in the beginning, you have to set aside those personal feelings of any setback, any failure, because, and keep, and like we talked about North Star, and remember your North Star, remember why you're doing it. If you have a mission-driven company, that's easy because then you can just look at, why am I doing this? I also tell entrepreneurs to solidify your values, your mission, why you're doing this, because you're going to need those 3 elements whenever you're in those dark moments. And for me, it was, having educators listen, that was hard. And finding the right developer, having the right partners, that was hard. But I think, like I said, what kept me going was the North Star of my company.
And
John,
that North Star, I want to know, how is Amanda doing?
She's doing great. She's in Houston still with my parents. She's living with them. The pandemic hasn't been, it's been very isolating. So that's been very hard, as I think for all of us. But yeah, she's very passionate about cooking, actually. And she's amazing.
How aware is she of your business?
She's been a part of it. And
that's awesome.
I have her use it, test it out.
I raised that because a couple of years ago, Vanessa Gill of Social Cipher, who is neurodiverse herself, was the grand champion of our Milken business plan competition. And one of her North Stars was to get actual entrepreneurs who are neurodiverse more entrepreneurial and more on that path. So I was curious how involved Amanda has been in your actual business operation, if at all. Does she speak on videos? Does she actually make any appearances?
I have been trying to get her to speak on videos, but she's so shy about it. Which I understand. I totally get it. Even I, sometimes don't feel comfortable. But yeah, I want her to get more involved. She does help out with design and opinions about that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
She's a wonderful smile, and you can also find that on the Instagram that you have for GoManda. I'm going to ask a question of John, and I don't want to take us into negative land, but John, as we wrap up here, and you'll be brilliant at kind of answering the question, but taking us back up. But what have you had to have conversations with some of the entrepreneurs in your life where, even though they've got a North Star and they're mission driven, just might not be the best business for them, or they might not be the best fit? Have you had experiences like that? And when should an entrepreneur look themselves in the mirror and say, maybe this just isn't for me, or the market's not ready?
Never.
Yeah. Okay. Bad question.
It's a great question. I definitely won't answer it with brilliance. I'll answer it with humility. I do have in some of the mentoring that I do often have feelings like, I don't know if this up and down and entrepreneurial ride is going to be right for you, but that's not for me to judge. It's for me to really understand, where can that entrepreneur be coachable, and where can we, nurture the strengths of that entrepreneur. Maybe they're organized. Maybe they are really great at pitching, but they're terrible at financial management, or they're terrible at technology. And we'll find ways to neutralize some of those weaknesses as we amplify those strengths. And I think it's really important that when somebody is touched by entrepreneurship, to really ensure that they have that North Star, and Celeste has that they're driving toward it with objectives and key results, and they're surrounding themselves with super smart people that can help them get there. So I don't know if that answers it. With humility, I've had to ask myself that question sometimes on my own entrepreneurial journey. But when somebody is kind of hit with that bug that they want to be an entrepreneur and they want to go for it, it's really up to mentors and advisors to guide them on that path, to extract those strengths, amplify those strengths, and neutralize some of the weaknesses.
Yeah. I mean, on this show, I think we hear stories of bending, some breaking, but then coming back. So Celeste, when it comes to GoManda, when it comes to you, we generally end the show this way, by saying there's a community out there of, entrepreneurs in education that are willing to help you. I'm sure you would do the same. So we're honored to have you on the show. If there's anything I can do, if there's anything John can do, if there's anything anybody on the community can do, I think just ask. We've got a great group of people that all have, I think, their own, say, individual North Stars of their business, but also believe in a rising tide, in this world. And that's the true North Star.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a community, and helping each other is the way we make differences in this world.
Okay,
Sure.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. We'll be cheering on your sister and you and GoManda and the rest of your amazing team. So everybody have a great day, and GoManda.
Yay.
Thanks,
GoManda.
Celeste.
Thank you, guys.
It's really great.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, Breakers. Next time on Breaking the Grade.